All right, y'all, what's going on? Hope everybody is well. I thought we would pop in with a drop-in surprise on a Saturday night. Uh, so hope everybody's doing well. I see a few people I know in the building. Gemini, appreciate that support. Good officer, what's going on? All right. Let me see. Malika, what's the word? What's happening? AB, what's going on? All right. Mr. Heat, what's happening? Now, y'all know with a subject like this, um, I just didn't really feel like doing it by myself. I don't mind, but it's a lot. It's a lot more fun when you got somebody in there with you. So, I reached out. A couple brothers hadn't seen it yet, but one who had seen it and mentioned it very early on, who I thought would be great to have on here, is none other than Mr. Green Gorilla himself. So, welcome in, brother.
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. What about yourself?
Man, I can't complain. I just ate some Chick-fil-A, man, with an Arnold Palmer and some big, a big uh, thing of fries, man. I'm good, boy. I'm content.
You got the itis. You.
Man, I ain't got the itis, but I got the all rightis. I'm all rightis.
That's what's up. All right. Let me see. Okay, hold on here. All right. Appreciate that, Malika. But yeah, man, we in here, man. I thought we could have a little discussion and get a few things going. We got about 32 people, 33. It's ticking up very slowly. So we getting people in here slowly but surely. Shango, Ickles, Tiger. Let me see. Voluntary celibacy. Gemini, DJ Monty for you. We got Nai, Jaddy. I hope I'm not mispronouncing anybody's name, but we got a few people coming through. GC, right? So we getting it in there. Now just in case y'all haven't checked it out, please make sure you go back and check out Green Gorilla show, especially in this last week. The brother's been on fire. So, definitely check it out. The welfare series is ridiculous. And the current one he's doing now on feminism. You want to talk a little bit about that? Tell people what to look for?
Oh yeah, man. Thank you for the plug. For the most part, I am covering a debate that was held in 1994 on Bill Buckley's firing line, and so you have a group of people who are arguing the relative merits of the women's movement of the second wave, for the most part. Betty Friedan's contribution to the second wave of feminism, and
Okay.
it's called "Is the Women's Movement a Disaster, or has the women's movement been a disaster?" So you got men and women on both sides arguing whether or not that this movement has actually been a disaster. So it's dope to me because it just shows you that some of the things that we're arguing about have already been argued about in the '90s, early '90s. So
And
check
they're
it
a
out.
lot more transparent than you would think, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you were doing this series. The feminists in that argument have been real transparent about certain things, and you don't hear that today.
Exactly. So why are they so candid about the shortcomings of contemporary feminism, but
Right.
I mean, not contemporary, but second wave feminism, but nobody today is able to offer any kind of critical analysis of it whatsoever without being typecast as a filthy, loathing, toxic masculinist woman hater. It's like, come on, man. It's like these ideologies and these theories have an impact on men's lives, on children's lives, on women's lives, and you don't even get to have a discussion about it.
Right.
You just have to blindly accept it. Otherwise, you face the wrath of you know, the radicals. But it's not even the only consequences are social consequences, really.
Right.
And people aren't
Canceling.
willing. Yeah, man, we become man. All I can say is we have a culture of weenies. I hate
Yeah.
to say it, man. Like, I mean, like you can't even say what you don't like anymore without being, accused of being a baddie, whatever that is. I don't get it, man. Like I'm just And think about it, man. Like there was a, I forget that brother, man, because it was another debate that was being had. I can't remember the brother's name because it just eludes me at the current moment. But where he was being critical of feminism, and it was Huey Newton and a few other people that were having a dialogue, and he was being critical of feminism. But nowadays, you can't even say anything. It's like if you say it, everybody's gonna look at you like you're the bad black man, the boogeyman. You just hate women,
It's
and
a
and every
McCarthy era kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, you can't reduce every critical argument or concern to misogyny. It's childish,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and and to show that people were actually able to go back and forth with the founders of second wave feminism, the movers and the shakers, that they
Right.
were actually willing to say that there were excesses related to it. It just says a lot about where we are now. And
No, it does.
and black men are for the first time encountering, all of these, these ideologies just bearing down on their shoulders, and they don't have any responses. Well, the responses are there.
Right. But we weren't. That wasn't something we were really made privy to or educated on in any serious way, especially in regard to black feminism. It's never really taken place. When we learn about it in school, it's primarily, it's almost religious in the way it's taught. It's primarily to indoctrinate you into becoming another worshiper rather than a critical analysis of how these gender dynamics work. Which is why a lot of the students that I have end up, thanking me because they learn it from a different vantage point. So, and that's partly what we're going to get into tonight. It's kind of unavoidable, especially on my platform when we review media. That's one of the main things we go for, at least here, because as black masculinists, we pay attention to the way basically this whole area. If I were to sum it up in some respects, a good portion of it would be the way white supremacy functions within the black family, the black family structure via policy and ideology. And the primary ideology that we find that impacts the black family is feminism, black feminism in particular, especially in regard to what it appropriates from white feminism. So that's kind of what one of the things we look at here.
But
Like
let
I
me
said,
interject real quick
oh,
before
go
you
ahead.
move forward. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a strange though mix because you have contemporaneous with the women's movement, second wave feminism. You also have LBJ's Great Society. So
Mm-hmm.
you got both of those, and that's what Ariana Huffington says, which is the woman who founded Huffington Post.
Right.
So at the same time that you have, the women's movement taking place, you got welfare taking place. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and the no man in the house rule.
Mm-hmm.
Women being given not real subsidies but piecemeal subsidies that come along with, and I'm using air quotes, therapeutic services.
Mm-hmm.
So those two together, they just basically destroyed, they eviscerated the black family.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
anyway, man. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'm about to put Gigi's um Cash App in the comment section. I'm just
Man, you
I
ain't
like
got to do
a
that,
couple of
bro.
different platforms doing it, just trying to get smoother with this stuff. So make sure you support Gigi. Um, and like I said, check out his show because it's not breaking from the topic. It's actually very consistent with what we're talking about tonight. We're just going to show how it functions in application. Oh, that's not what I was trying to put up there. But anyway, and you can support the show here, the Onyx Report, um, as well. Much as that, it's appreciated either way. And to those who already have, much appreciation to you. Shout out to Kashif for the Cash App. So look, let's get it in, man. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're looking at is this film. Actually, it might be easier. Hold on, let me do it. I'll just share the screen. Uh, if we can just start out. Wow. Whoa, there we go. My whole system is tripping. All right, there we go.
There you go.
Y'all know what it is, right?
Oh man, look. Oh my God. Just seeing it, it's oh my God, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Terrible, bro.
So we, as y'all can tell, y'all know, we watch it. We watched Coming to America. Came out technically Friday, but I think it. By midnight it was available. Thursday night, Friday morning. So I watched it then, since I don't generally go to bed until around sunrise anyway. And I noticed that Gigi had mentioned it during his show. So you saw it pretty early on as well. And this is definitely, as most of you know, right, the sequel to 1988's original Coming to America, which is interesting just off the bat, because what it is you find out the things you watched when you were younger, especially if you don't watch them again with the lens that you have today, they stand out in your memory on an almost emotional level. And so you remember it differently. But when you sit down and watch it, you really start to see some things. And that's the original. And by the time you see the sequel, but I'll say this before we delve in. The most problematic aspects of the original of the sequel are in the original. That's the thing that'll get you. A lot of the things that one might take issue with, and you're going to hear us get into it tonight, you'll find a lot of it in the original. It's just not something most of us saw in the 80s, because we were young. We just enjoyed the surface of it, right? But I thought we could get into some of the logistics.
Man, you said a lot right there.
Man, jump in, man. Tell us what's on your mind.
Well, just think about what the first Coming to America was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was a movie about a man who didn't want a woman who was prepared to be submissive to him and to, be directed by him, but he
Mm-hmm.
wanted a woman who he was in love with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the message of the movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And not to take away, from the messaging all the way through and through, because, a relationship is not going to be able to sustain itself if you don't care for the individual that you're with. But the idea that, he was looking for a woman who was going to be contentious with him. That's what he sought out. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you look at it in retrospect, it's a movie about a man who wants a problematic woman. And it just so happened this African king can't find a suitable mate where he is. So he has to come get the strong, black, sassy, independent woman in America. Is it not? Is that not the message, bro?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, just tell me where I went wrong. Now I'm not. Look, I'm not trying to be deprecating here. I'm just telling you what the messaging of the movie is, and and it was funny to a certain extent, and I kind of valued it at the time because you didn't see a lot of positive presentations of Black people or African culture for that matter. So we didn't have Wakanda back then. This was the first.
Well, at least not on screen. Yeah.
Precisely. This was the first Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
The pre-Wakanda. Right?
Right.
I mean, it just, that's what it is. So, like, Spirit, I see what Spirit of Justice just said.
I'm looking at the same
simping,
quote. He said Haiti simping.
But it was so much that was dope about the movie because, I think Eddie at the time was firing on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I don't know, man. I mean, I think, in order to maintain your comedic genius, you have to be on the edge. And there's something about a hungry artist, a hungry comedian at the top of his game, pushing the boundaries and, of comedic genius. And I think that he was able to do that in the context of this movie. So we started to see him play different characters, and you know, the barbershop scene, and you know, the church scene with Arsenio Hall. All of that was something we hadn't seen before, right? From Eddie, and it was genius.
Well, and we hadn't seen that in a lot of movies. To be honest with you, there was a lot about coming to America that was fresh and new, especially at that time. Hell, if you just limited it to some type of African royalty system, how often did you see that? Especially in a context that didn't include, like, I don't know, Tarzan or something. You know, you rarely saw that. Now, before we delve in, I want to show. So these are the logistics. I want to get these kind of out of the way, right? You have director Craig Brewer. You have, of course, the writers. Eddie is actually in this one as far as one of the writers. He wasn't necessarily in the original, but Barry Blaustein, David Sheffield, these were people that were involved in the first one, in the writing of the first one. And then there are a couple of people that are new to me as well. Justin Canoe, Kenya Barris. And many of us are familiar with Kenya's work, so he's involved in this. And Eddie is directly as well. This was filmed on Tyler Perry's studio on his grounds, if I'm not incorrect, in the Sidney Poitier stage, I guess it's called. So they filmed it there in Atlanta, from what I gather. So, you know, behind the scenes, there's supposed to be some significance to that. And I guess in one sense there is, but nevertheless, it was filmed here in Atlanta at Tyler Perry Studios, right? Using the original writers for the most part, with a couple of people adding on. And then, you know, you have much of the cast coming back. Now, what I told Gigi I wanted to do was kind of talk about, from the beginning anyway, some of the things we liked. See, because I know everybody gets up here and they want to hear you trash stuff because that's fun, and I get it. And I figure even beyond trashing, there's a lot to kind of pull apart and analyze. But in the midst of doing that, I figured we could get some of the positives, you know, on the table and then delve in. So it can't be said that we didn't do that. So was there anything in here that stood out to you that you enjoyed?
Well, I'm trying to dig through my brain and find out, you know, what it is that I did like about it. I liked the young brother and his unflinching and unwavering willingness to actually be himself.
Jermaine, played by Jermaine Fowler. You talking about Lavelle Johnson?
Yeah. The young brother who was the Prince of Wakanda.
And if I have to say it, for spoilers, obviously, this whole show is going to be spoilers. My bad. So if you didn't get that and you don't want them, this would be the time to roll. But go ahead.
Yeah. So at least to some extent, you know, he was willing to, you know, keep his cultural values intact and to, you know, at least resist against, you know, the pressure of having to become fully enculturated.
Oh yeah.
And to be proud of where he came from, you know.
Once he was told to, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm encouraged.
No, I hear you.
You know, encouraged, I guess. You know. But right. I mean, it wasn't just him. You know, I mean, it wasn't just the woman who he ends up, you know, coupling with that encouraged him, because you know his uncle, played by
Tracy Morgan.
Yeah, he also you know, encouraged him to maintain, you know, his own cultural flavor. So you know, and I like Tracy Morgan. I actually, you know, I think the cast overall, I think was acceptable. But yeah, I just want to say positive things before you know.
Well, yeah, the cast was, and that was one of the upsides to the film. The cast was really good. I mean, they did a lot of fan service, and as an original fan, it's hard to not appreciate that. So the cameos were on point.
Yeah,
I got to give them that. Many of them were a nice surprise. You know, they were funny. they were well placed in that sense. Were there any cameos you wanted to point out that you enjoyed?
The barbershop cameo was,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
in
yeah.
relation to, just going back to the nostalgia of the original movie and,
Mhm.
the things they, the witty things that they say in the context of the barbershop.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
Going to the church where they were about to get married, that was kind of funny.
The and some of the smaller cameos were funny. I mean, Louis Anderson.
Yeah, Louis
I really,
McDowell's. Yeah,
right. And McDowell's, it was kind of cool to see him. Even
John Amos was also great.
man, man, it's hard not to love John if you grew up in the 70s. Because if you watch Good Times in the 70s, you're gonna love John no matter where you see him. So
and
it's good
and
to
and
see him.
and what's funny about it, there are spoilers here. So, just his seriousness with ridiculousness. Like,
Right, right.
um, McDonald's has the McFlurry, but McDowell's has the McFlurby. And we don't put our toppings on the top of the McFlurry, Flurby. Ours are at the bottom.
So,
So it's funny. That
yeah,
was funny. Like
yeah.
some of the things were funny.
And, and,
Um,
and that was tied to a lot of the nostalgia, Like I put it to you this: one of the things that I loved about the first one was when they tied it in with Trading Places with Duke
yeah,
and
yeah,
Duke, and so they continued that with this one, and I appreciated the little, nods to those little things, you
yeah,
know. So that was a hilarious little scene, right, with Duke and Duke being represented in this new generation. Uh,
yeah. And
so those little things get to me. I gotta say the clothes, the wardrobe, they were done well. Ruth Carter, she did Black Panther. She did a lot of African inspired aesthetics. I thought she did well. I mean, that was the first time I'd ever seen what's her name, Leslie Jones, actually look presentable. Was in some of the outfits that Ruth Carter put her in. So I dug the aesthetic. I dug the way the wardrobes were put together. Um, anything else from you?
oh yeah, the musical stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gladys Knight.
Gladys Knight, yeah.
The new in vogue. Because I'm still waiting for the original lead singer. Because
Was
she
she
was hot,
acting?
bruh. She was
Was
hot, bruh. You know what I'm saying? So I'm still looking for. I don't know what she looks like now, but back then she was the deal. She also played the
right,
movie Juice. So,
right,
but
right, right,
um,
right. Damn,
who
she did play in that. Woo. Anyway,
Salt and Pepper, making an appearance, and look, a lot has been said about how black men don't respect women, especially in hip hop. But like women have been in hip hop at
mm-hmm.
least since the late to mid '80s. I used to
Well,
dig Roxanne Shante.
they
I
were
used to
in
like Salt and Pepper, man. You know,
well sequence. They were there in the
Man, funk
70s.
you right on up, boy. That was the
Yeah,
jam.
Monkey
MC
4+1.
Light,
Yeah,
Queen Latifah. In fact, I remember the first record she put out.
yeah, they've been there.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gladys Knight killed it. I'm gonna tell you, one of the things I actually liked was Morgan Freeman, and it wasn't just that he was there; it was that he was there with James Earl Jones. And
Right,
those two
right, right.
men in the same scene, you're talking about two of the best voice actors in the history of voice acting, as far as I'm concerned. The only one they were missing was my man Keith David. But to have Morgan Freeman and James Earl Jones in the same scene was, I dug that moment, just being able to see that because I'd never seen them on screen together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm about to say something negative, so let me not do that.
He holding them back at the gates. What?
Yeah, yeah. Let me stop right now.
Okay. So, all right. So we
Yeah, but oh, yeah, I was about to say something negative. Yeah.
let's do it, man. Let's do it. Fuck it. Go ahead, man. Delve in. I'm gonna give you the first bite, man.
Even though I like the wardrobes,
Uh,
and I like the cameos. I like the tie-in to the old movie and the interconnection between
right.
Trading Places and Coming to America.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something cinematography wise about it that I just didn't like For some
Mm.
reason, it seemed like a cheap musical.
Okay. You talking
Um,
about the dance scenes, or is there something in particular?
I just cinematography wise, just the way it looked, especially during the funeral, it just
Mm.
looked too
Okay.
much
Okay.
like a juke joint.
Okay. Okay.
I'm it just
Okay.
it it just looked like a cheap Broadway musical, and perhaps it's I didn't like the lighting, but that's
Okay.
all technical stuff. That's just me.
You know, the
Uh,
last. Well, I will say this: the last thing I did, I was surprised by, in a good way, was when they kind of added on film footage from the original '80s film, like when they were in the club in the '80s, and then you saw them kind of add to that, and then put Leslie Jones in there. It looked a little strange cinematography wise, but it was something I didn't expect. But
yeah,
the I mean, look, getting into it, man. Me. The biggest problem I had was all of the feminism, all the gynocentrism in the film, and we might as well get to the elephant in the room, because that, for me, and I think for a lot of my listeners, a lot of your listeners, that was the biggest thing, and most of us saw it in the first full trailer. Like, they had a teaser first, and it tapped into your nostalgia. So most of us were like, "Damn, this is finally happening," because it's been in the wings for so long. Everybody got used to hearing they may do another one. They may do another one. And it was like, okay, cool. And then you finally saw the teaser, and it choked. You got choked up, with nostalgia. But then they put out the first full trailer, and you saw it right then and there. The elder daughter, Mika, who is getting passed over for the throne because of the chauvinism of what Zamundan culture. What is it?
man. I
Zamundan
just
culture, right? Go ahead, man.
man, you could tell it was going to be a problem when it first came on. So eh, the the initial scenes were like waking up in Zamunda. So
Mm-hmm.
all the kids come in, and then you got the oldest daughter who's looking mean and aggressive.
The whole damn movie.
I mean, like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
even that's even guys that's practicing looking hard. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's with all this, man?
Right.
Like, in other words, she's more manly than a man.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
and you were right. Militant. They were trying to tap in to some of that BLM, aesthetic. Matter of fact, there was a portion of the movie she had democracy as an armband on her, in her outfit. So they were trying to tap into this zeitgeist we've seen, especially since from 2015 onward, with the rise of BLM, but especially last year, where on Time, the cover of Time.com, you're seeing black women made out to be the sacrificial, figures for America's, moral redemption, right? So they're tapping into that with her. And she's so serious because she represents that moral redemption that we all need. And apparently Zamunda needs, right?
yeah. So they, which is ridiculous. The first thing that kind of was off putting to me, I was like, damn. His children wake him up in the bedroom along with servants and all of this kind of stuff. I'm like, man, come on, man. Like, what if they getting it in? Like, y'all coming into the bedroom? Like, what is this, man? It's their anniversary today. Okay, all right, well. So then immediately after that, what I recall is a fight scene between Hakeem, isn't he the prince? Prince Hakeem?
Prince Hakeem. Well, he was
And, it,
Prince at that moment, yeah.
and his daughters.
Uh-huh.
So,
Let's get it.
I'm like, come on, okay, so you fighting your three daughters.
Uh-huh.
And they whip your ass.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right, well,
Yeah.
if that's where you want to go with this, man, that's. But I knew at that point, you ever see those videos where it says, "It was then that he knew." It was at this point that he knew. Yeah, bro.
I mean, when's the last time in a physical confrontation in a film you saw a man beat a woman? Can you
Man.
remember one in recent years? I mean, you tell me. I mean, as soon as the scene started, and I saw him standing there with the stick. I was like, okay, going back to this, they did this in the first one, him and Simi, and then they showed his daughter, and I said, oh shit, here we go.
Man, this is why I said I made a video about this, man.
Okay.
It was about, strong and something and calling kicking ass, taking names, and calling the police. So, this strange mix of women being strong, independent, and,
in need of protection all at the same time.
What do they call it? Fierce. That's the word. I think that encapsulates the attitude. This is fierceness coming at you. Right. But if you meet fierceness where it stands, then fierceness calls the police.
It calls the police.
Man, look, I don't have time to play games, bruh. You know what I'm saying? The reality is, when I saw it, I knew where it was going. And I knew, how many battles do men have to lose against women on screen in order to make women feel good that they are fierce? Like, women have value. Yes, they do. But, on average, can a woman best a man in a physical challenge? Most often not. Okay. So, to see that played out again, it's a hackneyed and trite trope. Mm-hmm. And, this is why I've been doing this firing line debate, because here's one of the moments where you have excessiveness and silliness being presented as justice.
Right.
And I just don't know what to say about it, but other than, it's unrealistic, and it doesn't have to be done in order to prove the value and the worth of women. It's fantastic.
Right.
And men being forced to see this repetitively is a smack in the face about the real material conditions of life between men and women.
Well, and this is why, like, my boy Quadwell is in the comments, and he's saying we're being too serious about a farcical comedy. It's not about the comedy, and I know you understand this well, Quadwell. It's about the propaganda, and what Gigi just said is important. It's if this were a one-time occurrence, it'd be like, okay, it's part of the story. But it's not a one-time occurrence. It's a repetitive thing. We see this consistently and continually, to the degree that most of us would have a hard time remembering a scene where you actually saw a man beat a woman in a physical or intellectual competition of some sort, right? That's why I said the moment you saw the scene begin, you already knew how it was going to end. I was not surprised in the slightest. Whether it was one daughter or three, we knew he was going to lose to that confrontation.
But here's the deal. The only other time that you see women being beat by men is in a situation in which it's being called out as oppressive.
Exactly.
But there could be no fair exchanges, a physical contest between men and women, period. So when you see it, it is, it's to make a political point.
Right.
It's being used in order to make a political argument, but pictorially or graphically.
But see, where I go with it is there was a time where it was they tried to articulate it as we need to show women's strength, right, to get away from the damsel in distress motif. But I think now we've transitioned probably in the last 15 years into a female superiority trope. So it isn't just that she's strong. Like if you go back to the early Aliens movie, Halloween, looking at Ripley and Jamie Lee Curtis, those were films where you saw, okay, women being able to step up and rescue themselves, step up and be competent in dangerous situations. This is not that. This is female chauvinism. This is female superiority at every turn, and men constantly tipping their hat in awe of female superiority. Because the thing I had a problem with, most of this film, like many others, most of the women were strong, capable leaders. Most of the men were buffoons and idiots. And it doesn't even have to be a comedy for that to happen. It really doesn't. Clearly Coming to America is, but the trope that it's addressing as far as male-female dynamics doesn't require the film to be a comedy for that dynamic to be in place.
But the reason that it was done was to demonstrate later on her competency as a ruler of Zamunda, and it was a foreshadowing of something to come later.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know if you want to go in sequential order. I think it probably would be best to do so. But I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'll take your lead on this.
No, we can go. We can do that. Let's see. So we start out now. First of all, unlike Wakanda, Zamunda, from what it looks like, was at one point in time colonized by the British, right? So you can see elements of that in both films. But now I did look up something that I thought might be interesting just to kind of put on the table. Now Wesley Snipes plays General Izzy, right? Or Easy. They kind of pronounced it both ways at different points. Apparently his father was played by Calvin Lockhart in the first one, and he was Colonel Izzy. So there's a nice little continuation there of strong black male actors whom I respect playing in that line. But I'll let you kind of, jump in as far as the early part of the film. Is there anything you want to pull out? So we were talking around, the point where Akeem is beaten by his 3 daughters. Anything around there you want to pull out?
Well, especially about Snipes, the first, encounter between him and Hakeem or Eddie Murphy, Snipes and, Murphy on screen.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he comes in like a jive ass, like pimp walking, being a buffoon. I'm like, come on, man. Like, why is this necessary? I was off put at that point,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, like, why is Wesley Snipes, this caliber of actor, playing this role in this manner? And
Mm-hmm.
who directed this? Who put that into a screenplay?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, it was, indicative of how overcompensatory black men are, especially black men trying to be, controlling and dominating, and they overcompensate with jive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what was, trying to be articulated there.
Mm-hmm.
That all of the hip swagger and, the pimping and all of that is really just to cover up toxicity or, a lack of competency.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's what that was about. And then also his son, the light skinned dude that played in, I forget what movie he played in.
He was in Power.
The light skinned guy with the dreads.
Mm-hmm.
He's a singer as well. I can't.
Now I didn't know he was a singer, but I know who you're talking about. I'm trying to find his name while we're up here. But you continue, and I'm going to pull up the cast while you.
Yeah, but he was a big, big softball. Scared of his own shadow, looking to marry into the kingdom. So Snipes is trying to get this arranged marriage structure or deal going on, and I guess him and his daughters weren't having any of it. And of course, Eddie didn't want to do this, or Hakeem didn't want to do that because he didn't want Eze to have control of the kingdom. So,
right, because he represents a neighboring country that's been trying to assassinate the kings in Zamunda, and now they're threatening to do so with Akeem, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, right.
And the lamentations about him not having a male heir. And then you go to James Earl Jones, who represents the patriarch.
Oh, you talking about here he is. You were talking about Rotimi?
Yeah, Rotimi. Yeah. He's a singer as well. Got a single out there, I think. But yeah, so I just thought it was they made him look like a buffoon, man. I mean, if you're gonna, but I know it's a comedy, but that's just too much, man. It wasn't done in good taste. That could have been left out. That wasn't necessary. But I think the overall point, though, was to make him look like a buffoon, which is, to discuss the ways in which black men look like buffoons when they walk. But because white men walk differently than black men. You know what it is. You in the hood, you walking, you got to walk with a certain bop, or you'll be perceived as prey.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
No, I'm not. No.
You got to walk with a certain swagger and a certain level of confidence, or it could prove, deadly. So,
Right.
to kind of characterize that as a buffoonery, I thought, it just rubbed
Well,
me the wrong way.
and you see now, adding to that, looking at those particular characters and what they're supposed to represent. One of the things I noticed is you had the appearance of two patriarchies, right, in both countries. But it was interesting because even since the first movie, you have Zamunda, kind of leaning to a shift in that, and of course Izzy's country represents this kind of unapologetic patriarchy. This is something I saw in the last Star Wars trilogy, where they kind of positioned a patriarchy versus a matriarchy. If you go back and watch that, you'll see all of the all the negative aspects of the order were masculine, and on the Jedi side of it, all of it was female run. There's a little bit of that here, but it's supposed to be both countries are patriarchal. It's just Zamunda is kind of leaning towards this major shift, right? And that's kind of supposed to be the dynamic. So here you have this general warmonger who represents this masculine tradition, and they imply that the people are impoverished and they've needed help for years, and he and his crew of what they allude to later as child soldiers, right, are just abusing power. And even though Zamunda is supposed to be a patriarchy, his willingness to listen to women and engage them suggests that it's more, what would you call it? Not just mature, more evolved, right? Progressive. Thank you. Right. So you have these kind of teaming groups against each other on the basis of that, and that's what's symbolized in that moment where you see them engage each other, and Izzy threatens Akeem a few times, and Akeem is just kind of quiet and resolved, or I should say reserved. And so you have this implication. And I saw this too in the Black Panther film. If you remember, going back to the guerrilla society in the mountains, the implication was that they were all patriarchs. Matter of fact, you didn't even see any of their women. But in the in Wakanda, that was pretty much a matriarchy outside of the fact that you had a male king. But on every other level, much like a black church, everything was run by women, right? And it seemed like the competing cultural differences between just the two of them were matriarchy versus patriarchy.
Right.
But yeah, so those are some of the things I kind of saw in that exchange, and they called it Nextdoria.
Man, that's so stupid, dude. Like, come on, man. Nextdoria. Man.
But the daughters were perfect and brilliant and well-spoken and reserved and mature, and the males were all
every woman besides Leslie.
Yes.
Was perfect.
Yes.
And even she was perfect in her imperfections. You know what I mean? Because in the end, they humanized her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't want to go to like what I'm thinking about, like what happens later on. Now, if you want to go sequentially, we can. Well, but I'm just saying.
Let's do it. We can be organic. Go ahead, roll with it. What you
feeling? Eddie finds out he has a son. Because Arsenio, Femi, I guess is what they call
Semi, yeah.
Semi, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he's like, remember that night we went to the club and blah 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 blah. He and then they show Leslie, getting Eddie drunk, and
she blew smoke in his face.
She blew smoke in his face, got him high, and had sex with him when he was passed out.
Mm-hmm.
Or unconscious. Okay.
Well, he was awake, but he wasn't. It was without his consent, right?
Yeah. So basically, she raped the dude, man.
Exactly.
She raped the guy, and this is perceived as a joke.
Yes.
So in the context, like this is like they're trying to let you know that female aggression is okay.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's hilarious. Yeah. And that shit ain't funny, man.
You know what was what's interesting about it is not only is female aggression funny, female sexual aggression is apparently a man's fault, right?
Female rape is funny, man.
Well, but look, but it was ultimately Akeem's fault, according to everyone else in his life. His wife, his kid, everybody was upset. I mean, look, man, picture this. Picture this. What if it was his wife that had gotten raped at some point? And, you know, in an argument, right, he's upset with her for having gotten raped. I mean, that's essentially what happened. Akeem was the one that actually got violated, and everybody was upset with him.
Well, it was before you, though. It was before you met me, so I guess that's okay. You know, like, all right, well, you know. I know it's okay, motherfucker. I ain't know you. I mean, like, what? But you know, but I mean, the whole, you know, comedic turn about him being seduced, if you want to call that, raped by Leslie. You know, it's bullshit, man. This is the double standard. This is like blatant disrespect,
right?
But they don't want that done. Like if we make a movie about a woman getting raped and laugh at it.
Exactly.
Tag team, it was funny. We make it comedic.
Yeah.
I think we need to do that shit to show them what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, because it's ridiculous. You know, but nobody commiserates with men because men can't be raped. They can't be sexually violated or assaulted. It's just funny.
And it's not even just one time. Like, she chides him throughout the film. You know, at one point he walks in their bedroom and she's like, "You sure you got the right room?" And it was all because of this, you know, this whole incident that had happened with him getting raped before. But I'm like, really? Y'all are going to continue to chide him? I mean, look, it was bad enough for me when I saw this shit happen to Batman. If anybody been watching any of the animated DC movies that have been coming out, you know, people smooth skip over it. But Batman has a son named Damian. But when you find out the story, it was much like this. He was drugged. He was taken while he was out of it. And, you know, she brings a grown son to him years later. And I'm watching this and I'm like, did anybody just smooth, you know, remember the fact that this man just got raped and nobody said a word about it? So we get to Coming to America and all of us knew the story was going to be about a lost son, but we were trying to figure out, you know, Akeem's character was never the type to really roll like that. So how they going to play this off? And they play it off with rape. And he's so high, the way he describes it as a boar broke into the room and was ramming him because he was high. And it turned out to be her, right? And I'm just like, there's all kind of horrible the way they're presenting this, but this whole question
of that shit is a tragedy, bro.
Be vulnerable is ridiculous.
That's a tragedy, man. It's a tragedy. It's the dehuman. First of all, if you're gonna make a movie about, I mean, at least if you're gonna make a tasteful movie about patriarchy, don't put a rape scene in it where a man is getting raped. At least be cognizant enough to know that kind of comedy should not be put in that kind of messaging box. You just can't. It just goes to show you how aloof these people are,
right? And
how non-empathic they are with men. They just don't give a damn. They'll put it in plain view, so nobody's supposed to say anything about this. But I guarantee you, none of these feminists are going to come out and say how horrible that was.
No.
I guarantee you they're not. But I haven't seen any of them say anything about it at all. But they know if they had to cringe when they saw that.
But I think you just hit something on the head. The two responses that I see most are either laughter or obliviousness. Like it either is not worthy of mention or it's funny, right? Which just reinforces the idea that men can't be raped. And y'all know from the show I did about a month ago, going through the numbers, you know, when you factor in incarceration, men actually have been getting, black men in particular, raped more often than women. When you add in the FBI's new definition of rape post 2012, when you look at made to penetrate, these are categories that had to be created to explain men's experience with sexual assault and rape, because the previous categories only dealt with women's. So when you actually accounted for men, they had to create a new category to explain what was happening with men. And we found that the numbers were fairly astronomical But so we get to this moment where there's an opportunity to put that on the table to really be looked at, and it's a joke.
And not only that, in the end, the baby mamas become best friends.
Oh man.
They become ace boon coons, which
So
they become besties.
So help me with that. So that would be like if Lisa, right, the queen, was raped, and Akeem was hanging with the dude that raped her, and then coming back to his wife, chiding her for having been raped. That makes sense to you?
Man, no, it don't make sense to me. You can't make it make sense.
I was just trying to figure it out.
But we live in a culture where everything is equitable. We're trying to reach parity. I don't look, man. I'm not here to pull punches, man. I just I call it how I see it. And I've been like a lot of people think that I've recently become like this, but I've always been critical, of these positions. Even like I've taken feminist courses, as a graduate student, and they were electives. I didn't have to take them.
Right.
But I'm thinking to myself, I'm being charitable. I'm not coming into this with the preconceived notion that, this is just women seeking for power. I'm coming here, being open-minded and orientated towards justice. These are my thoughts. This is what I'm thinking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that women, are wrong to argue against the kind of conditions that they were existing in prior to their ability to be able to enter the market and to be able to sign contracts on their own. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's terrible, like for a woman to have to ask her husband, "Can I please, go shopping today?" I'm just saying, like, even So Gigi is saying it. Okay, that's putting somebody in a childlike position to where they can't, enter the market on their own. They can't even, like sign a contract on their own. So if she wants a car, she has to ask her father or her husband or brother to get it for her. That's putting somebody in a childlike position. Okay. But when you take it a step further, that's when it becomes problematic. So they're pushing for more and more and more. They're going beyond the realm of good taste. But it's men that are not saying anything, and men who are participating in this. And it's Eddie Murphy is in collusion with this, and all of the writers and directors are in collusion with this. It's going beyond the realm of good taste.
But even the parodies are look. So there's a scene when Akeem comes back to Queens to find his son, and the first place he stops is the barbershop, of course. I don't know if you remember, but there's a scene in there where the old men are regretting not being able to grab and harass women anymore. And they're all kind of laughing and joking about how they got it in when they were young and lamenting that it can't happen anymore. And there's this kind of idea that somehow men just sit around smoking cigars, pining away for the days when they could rape, pillage. And I'm just like, what exactly is this coming from? Right. It's to me, it's a ridiculous kind of parody that really roots itself in this idea of toxic masculinity, and somehow everybody's toxic, as long as they get a chance to be, right. And so anyway, that those are the kind of things that stuck out for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was BS, man. They're basically articulating the idea that this is the natural state of men.
Right.
The natural state of men is to violate women at every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when a woman violates a man, it's non-problematic, or maybe it's just desserts. Maybe this is, payback for the, women being so-called sexually violated, even though women violate young boys all the time.
Wait. We're not allowed to talk about that.
Oh shit, we can't.
Come on, Gigi. We're not allowed to talk about that.
Man, I can't.
Rape only happens one way. Remember, men and boys don't. You're gonna get a slap on the hand.
Man, I remember like being a young boy and going to a drive-in theater, and a girl who was like 4 years older than me was trying to touch my privates. And I hadn't really actually had a sexual exchange before, so I didn't know what to expect. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Mhm,
like, what is this? You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
But she was much older than I was. But like these things happen, man.
Well, and
But we act like they do not happen.
but if you go to Tommy Curry's work with Ebony Utley, the paper they did together called "She Touched Me," they actually show you that black boys' sexual debut is much earlier than black girls, and most of the time it's initiated by older girls and women. So boys are actually violated, underage, quite a bit. And the degree to which we don't talk about it allows it to continue unabated as if it's normal. Matter of fact, we treat it like a rites of passage, even though the data suggests that boys feel just as violated as girls, but they don't have the social structures to actually reinforce the fact that they've been mistreated. We don't talk about that. They're not treated as such. And so that trauma goes on unsupported. Right. So then you have
Man.
films like this that gets everybody's attention, and there are these kind of dismissals about what men and boys experience in a certain way, and it's problematic. Now, the other thing that happened not long after that scene is when they finally find Lavelle, Akeem's son, and Mary, his mother. They come into the house to meet everybody, and one of the interesting moments I thought of was, one, I didn't understand why they didn't have a DNA test at any point, but
Yeah, yeah.
but beyond that, the mother, Leslie Jones, playing Mary, it never crossed her mind that Akeem could have been his father. She remembered Akeem, but when he mentioned being the father, she looked shocked. And then she was like, oh yeah, because they dropped a case full of cash. You know what I mean? So there was this interesting kind of moment where the way they kind of depicted it,
Yeah, because she was, of course, banging a whole bunch of guys at the time,
which she described herself as doing, right?
and even raping them. So blowing weed in their face and doping them up and taking the D.
Cardi B style, right?
She taking the D.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
Absolutely.
Again, yeah, and this is promoted as liberating.
Right.
For women to be involved in a whole host of dalliances, or engaged in what Walter Williams would construe as slovenly behavior. But I mean, think about this, and I just propose this to you, right? So we all know, and I think that you mentioned this earlier as well, that a writer for Cosmopolitan came out and made a statement about how women's liberation was conjoined to sexual liberation uh, unnaturally. It was a scheme because they were different, kinds of movements, right? So the hippies, sexual revolution
Mm-hmm.
meets women's rights movements, and then they conjoin the two artificially. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, but think about this: Cosmo just basically started fabricating articles to try to promote to women that they should behave like men, like they should have as many sexual encounters as they want. They should be engaged in careerism,
Mm-hmm.
and that men were like just like how men characterize women.
Mm-hmm.
But think about this, man. Playboy Hugh Hefner is responsible for creating the Playboy image.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and like having a whole bunch of women, and having a whole bunch of young women at that, right? Just sexing a whole bunch of different people, young girls or whatever, and have them walk around you scantily clad and so on and so forth. But prior to Playboy, you didn't see this kind of behavior put out there by men.
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Hefner is the creator of that imagery and iconography of the Playboy,
Mm-hmm.
and they did that to sell money. I mean, to sell products, man.
Mm-hmm.
They did it to sell cigarettes, alcohol, and cars.
Mm. Right.
And they did the same thing with Cosmopolitan: nails, makeup, perfume, and
Yep.
clothing, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You're a customer, man. You're not actually being liberated. You're a customer
Right. They were selling a lifestyle. Right.
in order to sell products.
Absolutely.
And people
Absolutely.
don't get this, but and by the time you figure out the inception of the lifestyle, you begin to make excuses for it.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to that time, think about it this way: no birth control, not very sophisticated prophylactics. You get a young girl pregnant, man, in the 50s, you about to wife her, bruh.
Right.
Your family gonna be like, sir, you got my daughter pregnant, shotgun wedding. We about to get it on and popping up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this whole idea that men were just out just screwing everybody, it could be the case, but there's consequences associated with that.
Never
You know,
always been consequences. Yeah.
you don't just get to go do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but once the sexual revolution hit, the sexual norms kind of just changed. And so now, men, act like it's a big thing to go around just sexing as many women as possible. But it was not, first of all, it wasn't possible before the advent of all of this birth control technology.
Uh-huh.
And second of all, if you did do it, you were going to be responsible for that. And women weren't as loose as they are now.
Mm.
I'm not
Right.
saying they weren't loose. There weren't some loose women. Can't say that. All right, but not as they are now. Okay.
Post-sexual revolution and all of that. Right.
Right. So anyway, man, people just got to understand that these people are trying to sell products, man. This is,
Right.
these lifestyle, these lifestyle promotions are really actually promotions for your dollars.
And it's definitely still the case, which I think was the turnaround with Eddie Murphy, because Murphy back in the 80s, he was willing to speak for black men in a way that we probably hadn't seen since prior, in a certain kind of sense. It was really raw, where you really had the first kind of mention of divorce and the way divorce impacts men differently than women. When he brought up Johnny Carson, I think losing $100 million in a divorce to a woman that hadn't told a joke. I mean, that was a moment. If we talk about men's rights, Eddie Murphy Raw, that was the first kind of introduction to the problems with that for men. Because if it can affect somebody who's a multimillionaire, then what does it do to a guy that makes $20,000 a year or 30, right? And just the impact of no fault divorce and child court rulings or family court rulings on behalf of women. Eddie was one of the people that kicked that discussion into gear. So to see him come out years later in this kind of gynocentric manner was a problem, but going back to the film, right?
Yeah, we got to stick to the script.
Yeah, well, look, so they go back to Zamunda, right? And one of the scenes that got to me was when they wake up the first morning, and you can go earlier if you want, but I'm just saying the one that came to mind is they wake up the first morning there, and of course Lavelle gets woken up by the bathers and whatnot, and the first thing he goes to do is go ask his mother for direction. Yeah. Meanwhile, as she's bathing there, with the first male bather we see, performing oral sex on her underwater, right? She has to tell him it's okay. So he has
to go have sex. He didn't know whether or not he should.
Right.
He needed his mama to give him permission to go screw.
You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm
Mommy,
going?
can I get some?
Right.
Boy, you better go get you some. This is an African tradition over here. And so, they going to royally bathe you. You better get bathed, boy.
Exactly. And she's telling him this while she's being serviced, right? So I'm watching this. I'm like, so he's a mama's boy to the point where he doesn't even know if he can have sex without his mother's permission. Interesting.
Man, you better stop it.
You
better stop it, man.
Make it make sense to me, man. I'm just trying to get it. Come on, man. This doesn't make any sense.
I'm gonna call you Talib. T, bro. T.
Make it make sense, bro.
Man, it don't make sense. It does not make sense, man. But actually, what that is that's whoring out your son. Cause she there for the cash, bro. When she saw that cash hit the floor when Eddie came into that project,
everything changed.
So now you whoring out your son for that money.
Well,
for that lifestyle.
you're gonna get his buy-in, hey, so that was definitely one of the things that got my attention. And then of course, Akeem is kind of horning him out in his own way, in terms of Izzy's daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to use the boy to basically kind of handle his problems with the neighboring country, all the while ignoring his daughter, who's waiting in the wings to be Zamunda's first queen, right? And he's
But
denying her all of this.
man, but the funny thing about this is, okay, so the daughter, the first in line, the oldest one,
Mm-hmm.
the very masculine matron,
Mm-hmm.
the very competent young lady who is the rightful, although patriarchally, the wrong one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's gracious enough at some point to help the young prince.
Right. After being hostile toward him most of the time. Yeah.
Right. So that to me is indicative of the graciousness
Right.
of black women. How
Right.
gracious they are.
Right.
How they'll still help you even though you are a total patriarchal ass.
Mm-hmm.
They're still willing to help you and serve what is directly contrasting to their own interest. Because that's
Mm-hmm.
just how good they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're willing to help you even though you don't deserve it.
Well, because they're faultless and they're above critique. I mean, what kind of critique can you bring to bear and have it be heard, especially in the black community, as far as the behavior of black women? Is there a space for that?
No.
I mean, I think the way Kevin Samuels has asked the question is who can critique you when he's talking to black women? Because really, the only other people allowed to critique black women are black women. And that's it.
Man, they better
But
stop
black
that.
men can be critiqued and handheld and cajoled and outright cussed out, and that's acceptable. But to critique black women is tantamount to, sacrilegiousness. It's considered. And matter of fact, we even saw it in the film, right? There's a point where Eddie Murphy tells his wife, or Akeem tells his wife, something about the quiet, watch your tongue. And and she gets up like, how dare you? Meanwhile, the woman just called him a bitch.
Let me just say this. Like a lot of people don't like this, man, but look, the very idea that you can't critique women because of previous injustices related to women, that's old, bruh. Like that's anachronistic. That's gone. That's
Mm-hmm.
over with. Like as long as men understand that that's done, you can't ask for equality socially and politically and don't have the attendant responsibilities associated with it. Now, the notion that women are above criticism and reproach, again, is a throwback to Victorian England and their patriarchal conception of womanhood to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Which
And
is acceptable to today's progressive feminists as long as it operates on their terms. But please continue.
yeah, but see, that's duplicitous.
Mm-hmm.
And that notion of womanhood is dead. I, I personally want to take a shotgun and shoot it. That's done.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to assume that you're morally virtuous more so than other persons just in virtue of your birth.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just how you are. You're just innately more virtuous than a man is. Like that's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, you want social and political equality. You don't want to be treated any differently. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
the case. You want all of the benefits of manhood, all of the privileges of womanhood, and the responsibilities associated with neither. That's
Right.
what you want. And you can't have it that way. And this is why that firing line debate is so important because these women who started second wave feminism are aware of this. They know the inherent contradictions in
Mm-hmm.
this. This is why I'm showing this to
Right.
point out and draw out. But they deflect a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even when the question is posed, they talk about the relative merits of the movement and how it enabled women to be able to enjoy activities of life that they hadn't been able to before, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't actually sit and talk about us except in passing about what is silly, or diversionary or neurotic about it. And at
Right.
some point, somebody has to have this conversation.
Mhm.
But nobody's willing to have the conversation because the default position is, okay, we got to fall back to Victorian womanhood when women were above reproach. But there was a reason for that. And I think at some point I need to do a show on that because women were considered to be more morally virtuous than men because they were the embodiment of the domestic sphere. Okay.
Mhm.
And men went out and did dirty things in the world where women stayed in the home and they were pure and chaste and virtuous,
Mhm.
right? And they were men's better half. And look, we know what these men had been engaged in. They were engaged in acts of colonialism. They were the ones out actually raping.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, literally raping and pillaging the planet, growing their coffers.
Right.
And so, but to put all men in this category to me is absolutely unconscionable. But it's done routinely.
Right.
But the extent to which any group of women want to fall back on this notion of pure womanhood, you got to kill that. They have to. They actually have killed it. They just don't want to see it die all the way.
No,
But
not as long as it can be used at whim in their
she's
interest.
that's a zombie right there. That is a golem. That notion of womanhood is like literally the Walking Dead. You can use it, but it has no real life in it. It's a
Mhm.
fiction to begin with, right? And so that they have to destroy that. But they're going, like you said, they're going to hold on to it, but you're holding on to a ghost.
Mhm.
So, hey,
Right. Okay. So let me see. Now, let me see. Okay, I thought the sound went out for a second. Okay, we're good. All right. So from there, let's see. I'm trying to remember what was some of the other things that hit me as far as that area. Okay, no, I'm still stuck on the queen. Not only calling Akeem a bitch,
oh boy,
and kicking him out of the room.
yeah, man,
And now remember, the basic reason she's frustrated, even before this idea of her daughter not being able to be queen, is that he has sex with another woman. So that was the initial part where she's still chiding him about that. Then she mixes it with him not allowing his daughter to become the next queen and then kicks him out of the room. And I'm just looking at this like, you know,
he should have told her ass, "My body, my choice." But I forgot, he didn't have a choice. He should- hey, look, I'm telling you, right? All you gotta do is throw back the same rhetoric that they push at you. That's why I want guys to know what the rhetoric
what
is,
the rhetoric is. Absolutely.
so you can use it. You,
Absolutely.
you got to play judo. You got to play Jedi mind tricks. Oh, I forgot the Jedi's taken over by
Right.
the matriarchs. I forgot.
So you can't really even go there, but
Yeah.
so that I'm still stuck on that mess, because it was acceptable, right? So you had that happen, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And then the next time you see them together, he has an orchestra outside of the room where they're playing the music they first went on their first date with as an apology that he's kind of extending to her.
Oh,
Appreciate
that's how
that.
I go, man. Come on, we already know how this goes, man. That's the passive aggressive abuse that a lot of men have to endure, and in the context of their intimate relationships. And so it's like a guilting and shaming technique when women get mad at you. You gotta leave the house. I want you out, and all this kind of stuff. You gotta sleep on the couch. You've seen this, man. You know,
Well, let me see. Wait, Jamal and Eastbound, appreciate the support. No, I've definitely seen it, but it's ridiculous. I'm just saying, in terms of the themes, she chides him on being raped, kicks him out about the politics of the country she knew about when she took the queenship.
right?
And mind you, they always had a queen. Let's be clear about that. And shout out to Madge Sinclair, who played the queen in the first movie. She actually died in 1995. She had a 13-year bout with leukemia. So shout out to her. She passed away back then. But they always had a queen. But somehow it's not enough to have a queen. They need to have a queen that's solely in charge, right? And so that becomes the contestation between them. But in the midst of all of this happening, he has to apologize to her, right? By having an orchestra, and then he's considered acceptable again. But notice, look, at any point in the film, did you ever see a woman apologize to a man?
Oh,
ever?
Hell no. No.
Not once.
No.
Not once.
But there's no need for a woman to apologize. You know, bruh, as a side note, I just want to say this. Apologizing doesn't make you weak.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's wrong with black folks, man. We don't know how to apologize to each other, bruh. But that's a side note. Let's push on.
Well, and I'll add to that. An apology ain't shit if it doesn't come with a change in behavior.
True indeed.
Even just saying the words mean nothing if you commit the same acts, you know. But you know, one of the things I noticed is it was one-way fealty, where whether right or wrong, men had to apologize, even if they were done wrong. And so you always came back to this kind of gynocentrism. I think about the scene with Akeem and Cleo McDowell, right, in his restaurant. And Cleo gives him some strong advice about what it basically means to be the king, right? What it means to be the patriarch, right? Where you bear the weight of taking care of everybody to your own expense, right?
Heavy as the crown.
Heavy as the crown. And I'm not gonna lie, it was an interesting scene at that point because he was the only one that had understood the weight of what was on Akeem's shoulders. And then the way he ended it, when he inspired Akeem, and Akeem was going out to handle business, he says, "Oh, by the way, what would your mother say?" And I thought it was really interesting because I was like, what did that didn't have nothing to do with the conversation up to that point.
But it had everything to do with it. It's like, you know, I always knew that the smartest person in Zamunda was your mother. You remember that part, right? Like, I always thought that the smartest one was your mother. And look,
Yeah.
I'll say this. Look, let me just be 100% honest, man. Women can be people who give you good counsel if they have your best interest in mind. Okay? And, you know, the first coming to America was like, okay, your daddy, man, this is the woman he loved. Go ahead and marry the woman, whatever the case may be. Okay, all right. Okay. So women, but let me just say this: women have always had an influence on men. The idea that like men just do whatever they want, wantonly,
right?
That's just a lie, man. Anybody that's been in an intimate relationship with a woman knows damn well it ain't just whatever you say with a woman, man. It's just never that way. It's like, at least not the experiences I've had. You know, you can't have a friendship if it's dictation. It's just not. You can't have any kind of relationship if it's just dictatorial. That just doesn't exist. It's one thing for a woman to be cooperative. It's another thing for a woman to be like jumping on one foot, doing whatever you say. Okay. I don't, and to be quite honest, you know, I don't think men want that. That's not what men are asking for. But the contextualization of of women being that way is bullshit to begin with. Women were never that way. They never have been that way, bruh.
Well, look, I'm going to add a little bit to what you said because I watched the film a second time with my son, and he actually had some interesting observations that I didn't have, so I was appreciating that. But I'm gonna be clear. What Cleo said was, I thought she was the wisest Jaffer, which was interesting to me because the only people named Jaffer were the multiplicity of kings. So it wasn't that he was just saying, in my opinion, that she was the wisest one, but she was the wisest of all the kings, which I found real interesting, right? It won because it had nothing. It really didn't have a place there. It was almost like it was kind of jammed in there because it didn't fit nothing that came before it. But two, it was almost as if to say you can't have a line of wisdom coming from men that isn't approved of in some form or fashion by women, or at the very least, a nod to women. Now, I completely agree with what you said, Gigi. I mean, I've been in relationships. Of course, women can provide good counsel. That's not even up. You're absolutely right. That's not even up for debate. It is what it is. We're human beings, and anybody can have the capacity to pass wisdom on to another person. So I fully agree. There's nothing wrong with that. But what one of the things that concerned me though was you couldn't have, like, put it this way. Did anybody in the film, any male, strike you as being particularly wise on his own without necessarily needing female, not having to defer to a female in the film? Like even Lavelle, Akeem's son, he didn't really make his own. I'm not gonna say he didn't make his own decisions, but I mean, he had to be led by his mother, by the hairdresser. I mean, at every
by his sister. Shit,
by his
he was
sister.
led. That boy was led in 1,000 different. He wouldn't have known what to do, and he wouldn't know how to comb his own head. Oh, I forgot he didn't comb his own
He
head.
didn't, right? I mean, at no turn could men be wise. They were just foolishly in power. But wisdom primarily came from women. And the only wise acts they can really do was when directed by women. Even King Joffrey in the first movie, he only lets Lisa come because his wife, the queen, tells him he should, right? There's no wisdom that comes from the men because men are not connected to wisdom. We have to do it through women or else it's not valid. And that's fundamentally what I have a problem with. This idea that, again, it goes back to what you were talking about in terms of the Victorian age, the Victorian era, as far as regarding femininity in a patriarchal context, that women are inherently pure, they're inherently wise, they're inherently beautiful inside and out, and that a progressive man is progressive because he takes direction from women. He doesn't really have direction of his own to extend. And if it's not authorized by women, it's inherently foolish and oppressive.
Man, I said this a long time ago, man. If women are that damn perfect, they need leave the earthly plane. They may as well not be here. They have earned apotheosis. Oh!
Right. You're lucky to be in their presence, right?
Now, man, like you've reached nirvana.
Exactly.
There's no need for you to be here anymore.
Exactly.
You got all the answers. But look, I'm telling you, we have a variant of feminism that is beyond excessive.
Mm-hmm.
We have power justifying itself in the name of power justifying itself under the aegis of injustice. Okay. That's what we have, man. And how long do you have to before you figure this out? How long do you have to endure it before you figure out, okay? Because many of us, especially, I was born in the 70s, man. Okay. Mm-hmm. My mother did get married again. But her and my father, they couldn't maintain whatever was going on with them. But so my earliest years, I was alone with my mother. And then my stepfather moved in. Good dude. But I've never seen this dictatorial patriarchy. I've just never seen it in my lifetime.
Well,
I've never seen this, bruh.
But and I'm gonna tell you something that you already know, and everybody knows. Gigi know it, so I'm not telling him as if he doesn't. It doesn't exist. Anytime you've engaged someone in a critical discussion about Black patriarchy, you know what tends to happen? They bait and switch the discussion from a system, which is what patriarchy is, and they shift that to anecdotal individual acts of abuse or rape.
Man, I just saw a woman do it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Not Facebook, but YouTube. She's got a video out and, about the patriarchy and some woman wearing glasses. She's a radical feminist, regards herself as one. So because Black men don't have institutional power, they reduce patriarchy to a system of violence.
Yes.
But when you look at the empirical data, you see that women are just as violent, if not more violent than men. They're just as rapey and creepy as are men.
And murderous, statistically speaking. If you talk about intimate partner homicide against a population of 43 million Black folk, it's pretty even. But we don't talk about one whole half of that. So it's just laid at the feet of men, right? But I'm really looking at, and I'm going with what you were talking about, but I can't help but keep seeing it. When we have these discussions about patriarchy, all you hear are individual acts. Like I sat in a lecture of one woman, one feminist, who gave a presentation about patriarchy, And not only do they turn to individual acts of abuse or rape, right? They turn to mythology, right? The big piece of chicken. I have heard scholars with doctorates stand up in front of a crowd giving presentations on Black patriarchy, and they cite the big piece of chicken as some kind of goddamn piece of evidence.
Man, I'm not gonna even entertain that foolishness, man.
But that's what I'm saying when I talk about mythology. That's where it goes, because you can't find a system of domination where Black men and white men are kicking it together, smoking cigars in the club, laughing about holding power and oppressing their women and children. It doesn't. It's not real.
Yeah, but at the barbershop, I can't. Boy, I remember back in the day, we used to be able to grab them girls on that ass. We used to be able to hit the cheeks. I mean, that's just how it was characterized in the movie, man. Like,
absolutely.
And look, men did used to be, like, wolf whistle with women and stuff like that. But damn, man, come on, man. Like, women, you act like women don't do this shit as well, man. Like, has a woman ever come on to you, bro, in life? Like, come on, man. Like, let's just be honest about this, man. And they do some like pretty creepy shit. Like, I remember going back to visit my family in Chicago, and I was kind of swole at the time. I was working out, hella hard, and I remember the women just like grabbing my arms and rubbing all on my chest. I'm like, motherfucker, you like my mama age, and you knew me when I was a fucking shorty. Why are you texting on me like this?
Man.
You know what I'm saying? Like this, like imagine like I'm 55 or some shit, and the girl is like 24, and I'm like, damn, that ass kind of juicy. Let me feel with that. Let me rub that booty real quick. Come on, bro.
Man.
But like women feel like they have the right to be able to do this kind of shit.
Look, I don't know if you really had that experience until you had a woman tell your mother she about to bed you.
What?
One of my mother's friends pulled that mess. It's real in the field, man, because it's a one-way narrative as far as what is acceptable is in regard to behavior and what isn't. And men, being initiating anything sexually oriented is inherently a problem. But that's because we're lesser being and we haven't achieved apotheosis. But look, there's another element to this that I want to bring in. There's actually two, because I do want to bring in a couple people, but I want to close out within about a half hour. So I'm gonna pick this up a little. There's two elements to this series that I have serious problems with. The first one is the depiction of a progressive relationship against an inherently oppressive one, right? So you have the progressive relationship, like you pointed out, right? Even in the first movie, where you got to find a woman that speaks her mind, which seems to be synonymous with cussing you out or telling you off or calling you a bitch in your own movie. But anyway,
putting you out the house.
Or putting you out the house. This is somehow a progressive relationship because she's an equal, and equal is primarily defined as someone who gets to disrespect you. And then what it's posed against, and they did this in both movies, and they actually brought back Vanessa Bell Calloway in the second one, right? The woman who was barking in the first one. Mm-hmm. She had been raised from birth to serve him as his wife. And they did the same thing in this one with General Izzy's daughter, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that those two women represented how women would act under this oppressive male patriarchy. Now,
that's bullshit.
The problem is, one, they didn't actually reference a patriarchy in Africa and ask how women were treated and socialized and raised. They didn't do that. They used kind of a Western feminist imagination about what women in a patriarchy must be like, right? Which, Western feminists generally regard as slaves, right? And then they depicted that. So now you have this choice between this woman who's prepared herself to be abused and be your servant that you're going to wipe your feet off of, or a human being that you can have dialogue with. And these are the two choices that we're given, right? And they do this in both movies. So you have this depiction of progressiveness, which is, to me, inherently problematic in terms of how they frame it. And then you have this imaginary African patriarchy, and they're pitted against each other consistently. And it's a disingenuous choice because neither one is actually treated like it functions in the real world. And I know this is a comedy, it's this and that, and I'm saying no, this is propaganda. This goes beyond that. This is a feminist notion, right? That if you choose this African patriarchal relationship, you are inherently an oppressor. And both men, Akeem and his son Lavelle, are marked as progressive because they both turn these relationships down. But you want to know the ultimate irony, though?
What that is?
Madge Sinclair's queen in the first movie was actually like Vanessa Bell Calloway, like Izzy's daughter in this one. They actually, her and Jaffer actually married, and she was raised to be. They talked about this in the first movie. Their marriage was arranged. They had a conversation in the beginning of the movie about how uncomfortable it was at first until they eventually came to love each other. So it's an interesting dynamic where, to me, the wisest Jaffer of the land was actually a product of the African patriarchy that we're told is supposed to be a slave.
See there, see there, see what you just did there.
Tell me.
No, I'm playing with you, bro.
I'm just, so that's one. That's the first one I wanted to put on the table, and I wanted to get your response to. And the second one, which I know you got a response to, right? You got 3 princesses that physically beat up a warmongering general of a military who, instead, I guess their idea of training is using shake weights and dancing to video games, but nonetheless, right? 3 princesses beat up him and all his soldiers by themselves.
Man, and the little ones too. They man, dude. But we already been over this, man, a million times.
Well, look, I'm just asking me. I mean, I'm asking you. From what I understand, not only is the character a warmonger, but the real life actor got about 10 black belts.
Man, you got to let them win, bro, to make them feel good. Because I mean, this is like what we saw with Lovecraft Country, where they imagine themselves to be these Amazonian type of women, where they could just destroy an entire Confederate army, where they have the innate viciousness and fierceness in order to repel physically and potently any threat that comes their way. But this is just an imagination of or a fantasization about their own power in relation to men's power. So it's penis envy, bro. That's why I showed that firing line debate, man. And I think Ariana Huffington is right about this, and I think also Camille Paglia made reference to it as well in that debate. That this emphasis that women move into the domain of men and do what men are doing is along the lines of the entrance into the Apollonian mindset versus the Dionysian mindset. So it's women's adaptation of masculinity, and they're terraforming masculinity to make it more comfortable for themselves. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm going to say, and I think the Sister Warrior is right. It's designed to emasculate young male minds. I think she's dead on with that, because the narrative is you got 3 posh, privileged princesses who take martial arts classes, and they're able to not only beat up a general, but at the same time, conquer his drive to oppress, Zamunda, to where after getting his ass whooped, somehow he's now willing to work with Zamunda. He doesn't terrorize them anymore. Trade routes are opened up, and she is made queen, all because she put hands on him and defeated him. So what's the narrative? Right. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. I'm gonna bring a couple people up. I want you to be concise. I want you to state your point and get to it. So the link is there. So come on through. But go ahead. I was interrupting you, man. Is there anything else?
No, bro. Thank you for having me come on. the
I mean,
very the infamous Gigi, the rabble rouser, the Luther, the anger translator.
he's the yeah, because he's really being nice. When y'all hear him on, but no, I don't want you. I didn't want you to go anywhere. I wanted you to because I think there's a couple people coming up that might need to hear from. Okay, so it looks like we have Kasank. I may have mispronounced that. There's a couple people coming up. You got to turn your background down. Okay, so it looks like we have Ma Kepra. There's a couple people coming up. You got to turn your background down. You got to turn
YouTube
off. Okay, so it looks like I'm gonna let him get that together. If that is a him, I'm not sure. Let me see. Anyone else want to come up? This is the time. Here we go. What's up, man?
You know I'm gonna say something.
You got? Can you? Let me see. Can y'all hear him all right?
Yeah, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. What's up, man?
What's up, Docs?
What up?
I did a review of this shit yesterday, man. It was painful. I'm like, this was like a feminist wet dream. What if a gas powered vibrator, man? It's
you say gas powered. Damn.
I'm sorry, nuclear powered.
Oh my god. What stuck out in this for you? What stuck out the most?
What didn't stick out?
Exactly.
I was appalled that in this cancel culture that it's still okay for it to be a joke or a pun for a man to be drugged and raped, but you send Bill Cosby up the river for that, allegedly. But yet they found out that a lot of the people lied. The stick fighting. Okay. I had to do little similarities. Let's say the movie take place in real time, 2021. So any of us who took martial arts or combat sports of any type, the master does not get weaker with age when it comes to skill. He becomes nastier.
Get it?
Yep.
He would have took them sticks, all three, and would have whooped their asses unceremoniously. I would have got it if he let them win, like fathers usually do with their kids. That would have made sense.
Yeah.
But even a martial arts master and a father lets you win a certain way. You don't knock him on his behind.
No,
that's not how that goes.
No.
But now in real time, a real martial arts master will put you on the ground and then tell you you're getting better. I mean, that's generally how that goes.
But Charles, this is what happened. This is what this is, man. It defies the archetype of martial arts movies in general. Because in any martial arts movie, there's the master who's chilling and letting all his proteges or his students do the light work until he's called upon to actually get busy and let all the underlings know who really is the master, because he's got techniques he ain't taught them yet.
I'll give you a good example. I've told this story a couple of times. The first time I wrestled my coach, he knocked me unconscious with a throw. And this tells you how tough we were. When we did preseason, we practiced in grass. Okay? It toughens you the hell up. Like, that humbled me to the point where this man could have had me 5 ways to Sunday. So I'm going to shut up and listen and humble myself.
Okay.
Let's speed up a little bit. When we get to, I forget what the guy's name, the illegitimate son.
Lavelle. Yeah.
Lavelle
Johnson. Go ahead.
Isn't that such a black name? God damn.
Mm-hmm.
No, not a Charles Amundi's motherfuckers. But he's so effeminated that he can't make a decision without a woman being present. And he literally reminded me of a best friend of mine when I had to tell him about himself, like, dude, don't ever admit to me that you are proud of your mother being a single parent. That's shameful.
Okay.
Who's your masculine teachers? This is the reason why women run over you, dude.
Well, he supposedly had his uncle, but he was looking for female direction at every turn. He wasn't
exactly.
He wasn't authored. He couldn't define his own direction. He was constantly looking for women in particular.
And then, if you ever notice this, every woman that guided him was ranked below him. I mean, for God's sake, he was the goddamn heir apparent to the throne.
Yep.
Yo, goddamn hairdresser. I can see Obama back. Yeah, can you get Mo back here to cut my hair? And yeah, I need some global politic information from
it is ridiculous.
And the sad part, doctors, and what was that, AB? I don't know that voice anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
When she gets drunk with a hood girl, and my memory serves me correctly, because we watch Coming to America more than we watch The Christmas Story.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
She's not even a hood girl. She's an upper middle class chick who went to college.
Precisely.
Which one are we talking about? You're talking about
his wife.
Oh, Lisa. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So she would, in real life, she would have nothing in common with Lisa Jones' character.
Mm-hmm.
So she gets up there drunk, and he's like, yo, you're getting out of pocket. And she puts the king, a monarch, the head of state, out of his room and palace. Like, I'm just thinking, like, if that was real, he would have Henry VIII her ass. They'd have been like, yeah, what happened to the queen? Don't ask. She's just buried this unsuspecting rug out back, and don't let anybody know.
Now, I want to get every person up here an opportunity to drop in something. So, now let me get AB. What do you want to drop in on this, man?
Let's start with that scene. That specific scene. That's not what I would have done.
Damn, man.
But no. I told BGS this on Twitter. The gynarchy is strong in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now there are some scenes I did like when he remembers that he was messing with Leslie Jones, and he goes to kick Simi's ass. I enjoyed that scene.
Okay.
I thought that was realistic. That was very realistic. I would have done this. I would have done the exact same thing. I would attack him and beat the crap out of him.
Mm-hmm. For putting you in the situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought that was very realistic. I'm a though. That's his son was a wimp.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's 30 years old, asking his mom for permission. My mom was listening to me by the time I was 30. I was asking for permission for to get babe. Really? Oh, and that's
I would have been knee deep.
Right. Oh, I'm still trying to kill the visual of that scene of that dude coming out of the water. I was like, oh, the horror.
I don't know if that was worse than the scene where she held up a candle and she kind of she opened her legs and tried to push the scent of her vagina with the candle toward anyway.
Yeah.
Make that make sense. Yeah. Now let me see. So we got a couple of guests up here. Now is it Kasank? How do I pronounce your name? Oh, might be having more sound problems.
It's Kasank Ma'ak Eperu.
Okay, right, so we can hear you now. All right, you would drop your thoughts in on this because we're gonna close out in about 15 minutes or so. So I want everybody to be able to get their thoughts out.
Right.
Just a number of things, because I am an African priest, and looking at this film was just appalling. It was garbage. For one thing, you have a priesthood that oversees the king and queen. You have an initiation process where you have young brothers taking a person through manhood. So there's all these supporting mechanisms that were just absent from the film. And the idea that you have two progressives, a king and wife, sitting on the throne, and yet they're trying to get you to buy this idea that Zamunda has a rule against women having businesses, which I don't understand. How did that rule come into place? And in African history, if you understand it, women were co-rulers. They were even far ahead of white women in gaining privileges such as divorce, getting alimony, things of that nature. But the real appalling stuff comes into the fact where you are displacing the real issues that we should be discussing, which is the civil rights, unequal treatment, police brutality, things of that nature, in place of extreme Black feminist ideology. So I'm trying to understand, like, how are we not addressing the current issues that are facing both Black men and women for this really supposed patriarchy in Zamunda that really does not exist. And again, I go back to the fact that you don't have two progressives on the throne and still have some type of oppression of women. And lastly, I want to say this, there are consequences to putting a queen as a single ruler. Lavelle passed the test. Lavelle, regardless of you can't make her queen just because the daughter wants to be queen. Lavelle passed the test. He was the rightful, and they were inconsistencies. There were inconsistencies in the script. For example, she said, I've been preparing for this all my life. Well, if you were the firstborn, obviously King knew he was going to have more children and could possibly have a male heir. Why were you preparing for this?
I thought the same thing. Right.
That makes no sense whatsoever. You knew the rules, and the rules in African tradition, as I said, I'm African priest, I was brought up in the tradition, are not there arbitrarily. They're for a reason. If you suddenly make her queen without a co-ruler, that's going to destroy the family line. You know what I mean? The consequences of how is she going to bring into effect a king or a prince and then give birth? What's going to happen? Who's going to rule then? So there's these things where they're trying to superimpose white male oppression of white women onto Black culture, which has never been historically our culture to oppress Black women. And it's scary to point of where they're displacing the true arguments and issues of police brutality, of civil rights, equality, economic.
But doing it through a fictitious African country, right? But at the same time, trying to introduce a queen, even though we've already seen, the last movie with a queen. So we're really not talking about a queen. We're talking about having a single rule. A single rulership without marriage, and she wants it to be a woman. This wasn't a push for her to be a queen. There's already been queens. Her mother was the queen, the queen. Exactly. Well, there's always been a queen according to that narrative.
And we can compare this to history in the rule of Queen Hatshepsut. She was pharaoh, she was queen, she wore a beard. But after her reign, Kemet, Egypt went back to having a king and queen. So,
that wasn't
there's a reason why it's the way it is, and lastly, we have to get out of this one-dimensional portrayal of characters. They were so cartoonish and buffoonish and one-dimensional. There was no breadth and depth to understanding the culture, understanding the characters. I just felt like I was watching a cartoon in a way. It's like the writing was just so superficial. But that's all I wanted to say.
No, and I appreciate you coming up, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, I think he was spot on about that, man. That's why I said, everything from, but it was a comedy. Okay, I'll give it that. But it wasn't an intellectual comedy. It was it was a slapstick, vulgar comedy, is what it was, and then interspersed with intersectional feminism is what it was.
And then at the same time, what we're also looking at is a kind of African American comedic imagining of what an African country, an African patriarchal country would look like, without any kind of analysis into various African cultures. Isn't that? Let me get the other guest up here. Obstacles.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and drop your thoughts in on this real quick.
Of course. First of all, shout out to all the kings and the pharaohs, and I appreciate your channel because it does the direct opposite. It empowers young Black boys, and then also some men could be empowered from the panel on the channel constantly. So I appreciate it a lot. So I definitely want to say that, this movie is just one of the many sagas that continue to perpetrate this type of dynamics between men and women, especially in the African or Black context. I mean, we have the same thing that happened in also, what's the movie called again? Black Panther, right? Where this coup d'etat, where the females decided to, take African tradition or just even the way things organized and take it into an entirely different direction and decided to make, choices on their own, beating up Killmonger, right? And now we have the same thing happen here with, like you just mentioned earlier, about Wesley Snipes being an actual real martial arts in real life in real time. And, it's kind of these things, I hear people and I heard the context. Beat by a girl. Exactly. And I hear the context of, well, this is a comedy. Remember that, I think KS spoke about the lady from Cosmopolitan, but there was recently an actual video clip, a documentary that she did also talking about how propaganda actually works. And, whether it's comedy, whether it's intellectual, whether it's, scholarly work, all of it matters. Scholars do watch comedy. And in comedy, you need to insert those. And actually, it's the worst when it's in comedy or entertainment because people have their guards down. Absolutely. When they watch something that it's a documentary, they're engaged intellectually. Right. And they're more so understand propaganda at that level, right? So if you watch the news and you're looking at some information about China, somebody's gonna be like, oh, that's propaganda. If it's like something positive, they can be engaged. But if it's a movie, they're like, oh, well, it's just a movie, so it really doesn't matter. And that's where the propaganda hits you, subconscious and, conscious. So I want to end on this point, is that this has effects because most people will say, well, so what, right? All my life, and when I was younger, all the way up to 30, let me say 27, I'm 33 now, I believed in this narrative that about my great granddaddy. He was a loser. Great grandma kicked off the land. He wasn't doing nothing. Come to find out that my great granddaddy was a World War II veteran. After serving his country and after sacrificing and going through all types of real war and horror, right? Not the one I went through in Iraq, but worse, right? He came back to drive a taxi company and just have his own thing. And I remember my sister was talking about him like, oh, he drank too much and he just drove a taxi, but great grandma, she was working 2 jobs, so she kicked him off the land. And this, remind you, this was the land that he got during the time where they made black soldiers have 2 additional parcels in order to get land, right? So they kicked him off. And I said, well, how do you know this is true? Well, that's what grandma said. Well, grandma was a child, right? So how would she know? And he'd been to World War II. You know what type of horrors he's seen or he experienced? And so I did the manly thing. I did the sophisticated thing and said what I had to say and do what I had to do to finally take my great granddaddy's land back from the Gynarchy and get it actually built up, rehabbed, and profitable and kept inside the family's heir of name. And I think it's important for us young black men to know our rightful place in this world. And it's not to be subservient to anybody else. And it's not to not control our own destiny. And I told my friend, the greatest investment that he can have, and this is no shot to anybody, but the greatest investment a man can have is into his brotherhood. I've not only sacrificed and made it through wars, but I have done so with men that I might have not agreed with, but I made it back. So invest in the brotherhood, and in the brotherhood, we can build what we want to, and not these fictitious Wakandas and Zamundas, but a real dynamic for black men.
Okay. Hey man, Obstacles, I appreciate you dropping in. Thank you for that.
Yeah, much respect.
Yeah.
You know, one of the overall arching themes I got from the movie is black men don't need to be king. You don't need to be a king.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back to the ghetto, you know, and struggle for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's what I was like. I see what they're trying to do. This is a straight up Gynarchy hit piece.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Not only that.
You can be dumb as hell. You can be dumb as hell. Be ignorant and arrogant and not know how to properly speak. Go ahead.
Not only
Charles.
that. Think about this. This little hood booger, in her mind, you a princess who was given everything.
Yep.
Less than a week, he outdid you.
Oh.
See, think about this. This is the one thing you got to break down to see with the lion. It was his idea of rubbing the cat food on it.
That's true.
It was his idea of making the cage to protect himself, not hers. The only thing she helped was rub the shit on it.
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually had more ingenious plans than she ever did. And here's another thing that I said to a female friend of mine. If she thought that she could be the queen, why didn't she offer to go through the test? See, that's the number one thing that represents the gynarchy. You don't want to fight the same fight that men will. You want to whine for your rights.
Well, but the implication was that they wouldn't let her, you know, in some kind of way. You know what I mean? I think that's what they were trying to imply.
And I would also ask, where for Zamundo is supposed to be this beautiful, industrious, modernized African land or kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Where the hell was the military for a damn warlord to walk inside the palace?
He came right up in that joint, man. Like
I was like, people like, well, it's a comedy. I like to tell people this one thing. A lot of your most racist tropes were comedies.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. They spent more energy guarding bedrooms than they did guarding the country. I mean, if anything, the standing military were the three princesses. But it wasn't much different from Black Panther, where when you got down to the military, it was primarily the Dora Milaje. But
the Dora Milaje,
in the comic books, the comic books, they were kind of like the president's, you know, guard.
Secret Service. Because even the border tribe, even in the movie, the border tribe was the primary first defense.
Right.
So there was like, that's why I told people, on a literary sense, it made no sense whatsoever.
Nah.
You can't. I'm just looking at it like, what part is this is funny again?
You know, one of the things, and I'm gonna say this and then, you know, give everybody their closing statement. But one of the other things that kind of bothered me, and I saw this in the first movie as well, right? You actually had a two-way discriminatory, you know, stereotypical, you know, kind of view of Black culture and African culture, right? There was a lot of both films made as much fun of ADOS FBA as they did Africans, in a derogatory kind of way on both fronts, right? It was real. It tripped me out to watch in both movies, you know, seeing it, that you had all of the stereotypes about Africans and you know, I won't even go through them, but when you really look at it, they did the same thing with African Americans, and it was an interesting kind of way that we can't, you know, be critical and funny without being stereotypical. And there's an opportunity to do that in a Black made film, or at least what appears to be a Black made film, but for it to rest back on stereotypes about, you know, primitive Africans and impoverished and ignorant, you know, ADOS FBA, it just becomes a parody that goes beyond parody. But let me give each one of you, I'm gonna start with AB, and then we'll go to Charles, and then we'll go to Gigi. Any closing thoughts, reflections you want to share?
SYSBM, don't believe the Gynarchy hit piece called Coming to America.
Okay. All right. Much appreciated.
Have a good one.
You as well, man. Thanks for coming up.
No
Charles,
problem.
any thoughts, man? What do you want to close on?
from a real life warrior since the day he was brought into this world. Don't let Hollywood nor the gynarchy dictate your masculinity towards you.
Word.
Woo!
Word. Word.
Woo, brother.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that, man. All right. And I hope you're feeling better, brother. Let me see. All right. Gigi, what you think, man? Anything you want to drop on here?
Ultimately, man, Hollywood, as well as the media in general, has been involved in promoting, these narratives about female superiority under the veneer of inclusion and diversity. I don't know who's making these guidelines, but we know they've been made before. I mean, I don't know if you know about the motion picture production code that was set up by the studios in the 1930s. And they basically came up with this known as Hays Code. And he was the president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America. And they had a host of legislation that was coming up in the Congress because of some scandals that had taken place in the 1920s. Okay, so they decided to self-regulate and to push specific kinds of narratives. I think something contemporarily is being done in relation to media production. Can't quite put my finger on it yet because there's no formal exposition of what's going down and how it's going down, but we're getting glimpses of it, especially with the woman who just recently came out with the documentary from Cosmopolitan, how she was urged to promote certain narratives to women. And I think all of this is being done in the service of capitalism. All of this is propaganda used to sell products.
Absolutely.
And to sell lifestyles. And so people don't want to believe that. They want to believe that they're, working in service of justice. But in actuality, more often than not, they're being sold a product or a service. And it's sad, that we're at this point. But, I hope to continue to inform and to get people to understand that these ideologies aren't necessarily rooted in justice. And, they're often just rooted in filthy lucre. So,
absolutely. And y'all make sure you check out Charles Faulkner's review of Coming to America 2. Also, check out the Green Gorilla channel right here on YouTube. Look it up. You need to go back. You got some homework to do because if you're delving into Gigi, you can't just start with the last video. You're going to get addicted. So check out the brother's channel, Green Gorilla. And I appreciate you coming up here, man. Thank you.
Oh, man, you're most welcome, bro.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All
right, y'all. Appreciate y'all coming through in this drop-in show. Just wanted to pop in real quick and just give you some things to think about in relation to the film, at least in terms of some of the things I saw. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and I appreciate you being here, and y'all have a good weekend. Peace.